Okay, I want to know if you are anything like me. So, I used to spend all day, every day, making decisions and completing tasks that by the time dinner rolled around, I was tired and I'd get pretty cranky when it came time to decide what to make for dinner. And this can still occasionally happen. I'm making decisions all day. I do get tired, but over time I realized that the nights that I enjoyed the most were the ones where I already had a plan in place for dinner and all I needed to do was execute and clean up. And it made it so much simpler. So today I have 4 tips for you. And these are 4 things that I have found to be really helpful for me in my meal planning routine to make it super simple and reduce the stress of dinner time so that when you sit down to actually create that plan, it's not overwhelming and you can actually enjoy dinner time again. Are you ready to stop the chaos, the stress, the overwhelm that's filling your life? I'm Renee Matt, and together you and I are going to build simple routines that are going to change your life. When you put these habits into practice, you're going to be able to organize your life in a way where you can be there for your family, pay off your debt, save money, your house can stay organized, you don't have to stress about what's for dinner, and you still get time for yourself. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to the Routine Advantage Podcast. I wanted to share these tips today because there are a lot of times in seasons of our life where dinner time gets more stressful than others. And I know we are heading into the fall season. Kids are back to school. We're going into holidays, and life is probably just going to be busy. There's always some sort of busyness to life. And we always say, well, when life slows down, and that's just never really happening. So creating routines that help us purposefully slow things down and make them simpler just makes life a little easier and helps you to really enjoy those moments, even when we're still focusing on the responsibilities that we have to do. And so today I actually wanted to share 4 tips that help me plan ahead so that I can have more peace in the evenings and I don't have to get tired and cranky when I'm deciding what we should have for dinner. So these are 4 tips. They're in no particular order, and you can take all of them or you can just take one of them. And I'm hoping that they will help you as you get your meal planning in place, or even just to improve or tweak your meal planning routine if you feel like something's not quite right and you want to just make a little change so that it makes it even simpler. So, first off, number 1 is to plan your dinners prior to the start of the week. So, this one is huge for me. If I am planning the dinner for that day, it makes it more overwhelming, and I don't know why. I maybe it's just a mindset thing, it's, like, psychological, but when I take the time to plan out my dinners for future days, it's so much easier to have a different perspective and write those down. So, I personally like to do all my planning for the week ahead on Friday. And I've talked about this before. I know a lot of people do it on a Sunday. And if that works for you, that's great. But I know for me, I don't like waiting until Sunday because I will worry about it all weekend. And I don't really truly enjoy my weekend because I'm stressing about not feeling prepared for the week ahead. And I don't want to have to carve out that time on a Sunday because I want to really enjoy my Sunday. So, personally, I do all of my planning as much as I can on Friday mornings for the week ahead. And sometimes meal planning is in that process, sometimes it's not. But if it's not, a lot of times we end up doing it on like a Thursday night, and my husband and I will talk about it, or I'll just pull it out as we're like after dinner, or if we're sitting down to watch a show, I'll just pull it out and just ask him a couple questions quick and we'll just jot them down and then we're good to go. And it's not a full complicated process anymore. It used to be, but it's so much easier now when we have this routine in place that you will find the more you do it, the quicker you will get. But I think it's super important to plan it prior so that you're not in the stress. You can kind of look out into the future. You have a different perspective. It doesn't feel as stressful when you are doing it for a future date. Okay, tip number 2 is to pick a pattern when you plan your meals. And for this one, I'm mostly focusing on dinners, but it does apply to your breakfasts and lunches and things like that as well. But when you think about creating a dinner, it's really helpful when you have your own personal pattern that works really well for you. So, an example of this might be to start with your protein. And whether that is buying a protein, maybe it's something you already have in your cabinets. If it's a veggie based protein, maybe it's something you have in your freezer, all these different options for you. You start by picking which protein you want to have and then go to your veggie. Like, what is going to be your veggie side? Is it going to be a salad that you put your protein in? Is it going to be roasted vegetables on the side? Like, all those things. So you pick your protein, then your veggie, then you add your carb, whether this is sweet potatoes or mashed potatoes, or maybe it is something completely different. Maybe it is, pasta or a side of bread, things like that. You want to have this pattern that will just make it a lot easier to plan out your meals so that you aren't kind of juggling all these different options. When you kind of focus on one thing at a time, it makes it a little bit easier to plan out the whole week. And maybe starting with a protein isn't for you. Maybe you like to start with a veggie. Like, are you going to do roasted veggies, or are you going to do a salad, or are you going to do something completely different? And then when you know that you have roasted veggies, you know that grilled chicken is going to go really well with that. So then you can pick your protein next. If you want a salad, again, grilled chicken goes great with that, but maybe you would prefer to, grill a steak on the side, or maybe you would like to use a lot of the beans and do some sort of bean salad. And then we're getting rid of the lettuce and we're doing something different. We're putting, like those onions and tomatoes and like green veggies like broccoli in like a bean salad or something like that, where it makes it a little bit easier when you have a first focus so that you can really hone in on what you're creating. It just makes creating the meal or deciding on the meal a lot easier for me. And if you struggle with that, maybe that would be easier for you too. So, like I said, if you want to use chicken, maybe it's going to be a soup. And then at that point, you can decide what veggies you're going to go put into that soup and what kind of soup you want to make. So I think this is a good baseline. I don't think every meal has to focus on this, but when you pick a pattern of what to focus on first, it will help you when you're feeling kind of stuck. But if you know that you want a soup and a certain kind of soup, don't stress about saying, well, I have to pick the protein first and then I have to pick the veggie. That's not what this is for. This is just to give you a default routine on how to build a meal when you are feeling really stuck. And personally, for me, I love using the protein first on this one because we tend to have a lot of meat stocked up in our freezer. So it makes it really easy if we're like, okay, we know what's in our freezer. Let's pick something from there first and then decide how we want to cook it and what we want to pair with it. And so for us, we typically will do protein first, then veggie, and then we add in any additional sides like a fiber-filled carbohydrate or something like that. So that's a personal preference, but you just want to pick what works well for you for building that default meal. And tip number 3 is to plan out one meal time at a time for the week. Now, to clarify this one a little bit, I'm focusing on like dinners. So plan out all of your dinners for the whole week at once. It just makes it a little bit easier rather than starting on Monday and doing breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then trying to do that throughout the whole week. That is a little bit more daunting to me. And I have found that it is so much easier when I plan out my meal plan by doing all dinners at once. And then when I go to breakfasts, it's like, okay, well, I don't want to have to do a different breakfast or a different lunch every day. So I'll pick breakfast and I'll pick like 1 to 3 different types of breakfasts. And then I'll just put that across the whole week. And then for lunches, I do the same thing. I pick like 1 to 3 different types of lunches and I put them across the whole week. And that has made it so easy for me because it's really quick rather than going day by day and trying to think of 3 different decisions for every single day of the week. I can plan out the dinners and I don't forget the fridge sweeps. If we've talked about those, you know what those are. But you plan out the whole week, and then you go to breakfast and you plan a couple of those, and then you plan a couple of the lunches, and you can do the same thing with snacks. It just makes it so much more streamlined that I think that it makes the meal planning process a whole lot easier. And then finally, tip number 4 is to pick a menu board that works for both you and your family. So if you are living alone, then this doesn't matter so much. You just need to find something that works well for you. And writing it down, even though it's just you, is still super helpful. But if you are living with others in your home, it's important for them to be able to see what is coming up too, because not only are you going to not get asked what's for dinner all the time, but they can also help out. They know what to expect. It just makes it a lot easier to plan those meals and to stay consistent with actually making those meals, especially if you're picking things that your family enjoys. So, when I talk about a menu board, you can find whatever works best for you. This could be a whiteboard, it could be a chalkboard, it could be in your paper planner, but that one might be a little bit hard to only do it there because then your family doesn't have access to that. But you could certainly plan it out in your planner and then post it somewhere else for your family. But my favorite is a wall calendar. And I do have previous episodes on this where I talk about this. And if you need to go back and listen to those, you can go and in our Facebook community, we actually have a link in our show notes to join our Facebook community. And pinned at the top is an episode library. And that is the only place that this episode library is posted. But if you go to the episode library, then you can search keywords and you'll be able to find all my meal planning episodes so that you can go back and get all those tips, which include my tip on the wall calendar. But we like using just a flip, like a coil bound wall calendar that hangs flat, and we have it posted inside of our kitchen cabinet. So it is super easily accessible, but it still is kind of hidden and out of the way so it doesn't look cluttered. But it makes it so easy to just quickly write in our meal plan. And then not only do we have it easily accessible, we also have weeks and months worth of meal plans at our fingertips because we don't just erase it like we do on a whiteboard and that whole meal plan is gone. It just follows week to week. So if we're really stuck and not sure what to have, all I have to do is flip back into previous months and either pick an entire week or just pick certain days that work really well, and it makes the meal planning process a lot easier when when we do that, because a lot of the times we're eating similar things all the time that we're familiar with and we're comfortable with and we know we like. So if your family is the same way, unless you are doing crazy different meals all the time, you will probably find that this method works really well for you. And I just love doing it that way. And I use one of the friction erasable pens to write it in. So if something changes, I don't have to worry about it, needing to get all messy. Like I can just erase it and write something else in. If you don't want to buy a friction erasable pen, you can just use a pencil or use a pen if you don't mind just crossing it out and making it a little messy. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're just getting a process to plan ahead so that you don't have to make those decisions once your day is over, because we want to really enjoy our time. And if we plan ahead, you don't have to worry about what's for dinner. You know exactly what's for dinner. All you have to do is go home and throw it in, or your family can help you out if that is a situation that you can do. If you have kids that are learning how to cook, you can focus on teaching them and enjoying that time with them rather than being stressed about trying to figure out what's for dinner and things not being thawed because you are now pulling it out for dinner when dinner should be, in 30 minutes, and you're pulling something that is rock hard out of the freezer. It's not fun. It makes things more stressful. And by doing it this way, we can prepare and plan ahead so that you don't have to make those decisions and you can just actually enjoy your evenings, throw on some music, cook, and just enjoy that time. And I have mentioned it before, and I just want to say it one more time if you haven't done it yet, or if you haven't heard those previous episodes. One of the things that my husband and I like to do is to have a container. We have just like one of those long plastic containers that are like a fridge drawer, basically, but it's a narrow container that sits in our fridge and it's labeled as meat. And we keep that, we wash it, and we put it right back in the fridge, even if it's empty, because in the evenings or sometime during the day, it's our reminder to look ahead at our meal plan for the next couple of days to see if there is anything that needs to be pulled out. And it has just become our routine. It's usually during our dinner cleanup process to look at the days ahead and see if we need to pull anything out so that it is thawed and prepared by the time the next day rolls around and we're not waiting for something to thaw. So that is something that has helped us a ton. If you don't want to buy a certain container, you don't have one, you could easily just use a bowl or some sort of bin that works well and fits in your fridge that you could use. But I think that has been a big game changer for us to make sure that we feel really prepared. And so, a really quick recap on those so that you can hopefully take at least one of these to be helpful for you so that you can plan those dinners for more peace in the evenings instead of getting tired and cranky. Number one tip is to plan your dinners prior to the start of the week. Number two is to pick a pattern, whether it is starting with your protein, then veggie, then carb, or maybe it's veggie, then protein, then carb. However, you want to do it, pick your pattern as your default to build a meal if you're stuck. Number three is to plan out one meal time at a time for the week. So plan all your dinners at once, plan all your breakfasts at once, and plan all of your lunches at once rather than going day by day. And then tip number four is to pick a menu board that works for both you and your family. And I personally recommend doing the wall calendar because it is so easy and you've got all of your meal plans at your fingertips as you start to do this and you get more collected. So I hope that was helpful for you. And if you have not had a chance to leave a rating or review, please take a minute to do that in your podcast app. I appreciate every single one. And I read all of them and I absolutely love hearing from you. And when you can actually do a written review, it even shows me what you're really enjoying about the show. And it just encourages me to keep going. And I feel very blessed to be able to help women like you and hear from you so that I can help you even more. And I just super, super appreciate it. So if you have not done that yet, I would be very, very grateful if you would take a minute or two to do that. And then, like I said, any of the links that you want are in our show notes. So if you want to join our Facebook community or get the workbook that is the blueprint for organizing those 5 foundational routines for you in your life, it's all in our show notes that you can have access to that. And I hope this was helpful, and I will see you on the next episode. Did you love that episode or learn something useful? If so, would you do me a huge favor? My goal is to grow this podcast and help as many women as I can break free from the overwhelm so they can truly enjoy their life. The best way for me to do this is for you to leave a 5-star written review on your podcast app and to share this episode with a friend or in your Instagram stories. I appreciate you being here. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you on the next episode. Take care.